And welcome to the Kimberly Guilfoyle Show, live on Rumble, where facts come first and where news is done right. And today, the warning signs for Joe Biden and the Democrats are growing louder and louder as an absolutely devastating poll reveals that Americans are waking up to the reality of the nonsense, worsening Democratic disasters. And that is all just ahead. And we have an all-star slate of guests to lay out how it's gotten so bad so fast and the solutions to fix it all. Texas Congressman Lance Gooden will be here in moments to discuss the growing momentum for Trump 2024 and how the GOP Congress is making big strides in bringing the dangerous Democrat Biden agenda to a halt. And later on, iconic author, the one and only Victor Davis Hanson, will join us to expose the far-left failures from coast to coast in big blue states like New York and California. But first, amid growing evidence of the Biden family's corrupt, shady foreign dealings, House Oversight Chairman James Comer is teasing a big announcement on Wednesday surrounding the investigation into Hunter Biden. Here's what he had to say yesterday. Take a look.
My message to the Department of Justice is very loud and clear. Do not indict Hunter Biden before Wednesday, when you have the opportunity to see the evidence that the House Oversight Committee will produce with respect to the web of LLCs, with respect to the number of adversarial countries that this family influence peddled in.
Now, those comments came amid a new report from The Guardian that the White House is preparing for possible charges against Hunter. But remember what we told you last week. This isn't just a Hunter Biden scandal. It is a Joe Biden scandal. Now, Comer is also subpoenaing a key FBI file that allegedly links Joe to a massive foreign bribery scheme as part of his committee efforts to unravel this web of foreign corruption. And an IRS whistleblower also wants to speak out about the problems inside the Hunter probe. And while Joe Biden tries to get his 2024 re-election campaign off the ground, it's not working out so well. Because so far the struggles are as obvious as ever, as Biden could barely get through a softball interview with MSNBC. Here's Joe trying to explain his infrastructure plans. See if you can even understand one bit of what he's trying to say. Watch.
You're going to be able to get an Amtrak, and instead of going through the tunnel of Baltimore at 30 miles an hour because nothing's been done under the Chesapeake Bay under the Baltimore area for 80 years. They're going to be able to go at 100 miles an hour. They're going to see railroads going from Syracuse to all the way down to New York, upstate New York. Anyway, to the city. But I guess what I'm saying, what I think that we're going to see is movement.
And the signs for Biden are only getting worse, as a new ABC Washington Post poll shows Biden getting trounced by 7 points to Donald Trump in 2024, all while suffering from an awful 36% approval rating. And the numbers are so dismal that even Biden's allies in the media are wondering what's going on. Here's the coverage yesterday on ABC. Take a look.
Talked earlier about that record low approval rating for President Biden. It's actually 6 points down just since February. And the skepticism over his leadership extends deep inside his own party. Only 36% of Democrats think that their party should nominate Joe Biden for a second term. 58% say they would support someone else or prefer someone else. That's despite the fact that the entire DNC and most of the Democratic establishment has rallied behind President Biden. And you're seeing real weaknesses in the coalition that powered Joe Biden to the presidency back in 2020. Biden carried independents by 13 points against Donald Trump. He is now trailing Trump by 9 points among those same voters. He carried black voters by 75 points in 2020. Now he is up just 35. That may sound like a lot, but the fact of the matter is, in modern politics, that is not the kind of number that a Democrat needs to be victorious.
Joining me now for reaction to this and much more, Texas Congressman Lance Gooden, who recently endorsed President Trump. Congressman, thank you so much for being here with me in the studio. Yeah, so, well, big news today as well. You are fresh off the heels of actually meeting with President Trump. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I was at Mar-a-Lago earlier today. I visited with President Trump, and he's upbeat. He's very excited about these poll numbers. He's excited about the campaign. But what I talked about with him that I think is so great about this is it actually helps him more in the primary, because so many of these naysayers that are saying, well, I just don't think Trump could win in the general and we need someone new.
So true.
I talked last week, I had lunch with a Texas donor who said, I like Trump, I just don't think he can win in the general. Well, yesterday I sent him these poll numbers.
I love it.
And he said, I'll stop making predictions. And so I'm telling all my expert friends, just sit back and watch, because what we're seeing is Biden is bleeding support among independents in his own party even. Democrats don't have the faith in him. But this argument by some of these anti-Trumpers in our own party, a lot of the DeSantis crowd, Haley's crowd, and others, they're losing this argument that they've been pushing that Trump is unelectable in November. That's just not true.
It's such a good point, because you're right. That does help him so much more. Because people say, well, I don't want to give a vote for him, or I don't want to support him or back him financially or otherwise if they don't think he's the guy to be able to beat Joe Biden. And that has been a very consistent kind of play that a lot of the opponents and people that would like to win the primary for themselves have been utilizing, and effectively for a bit with some, big donors, etc. But what you see is this progression and continuation of a really rise in momentum for President Trump. The poll numbers, you're seeing even the liberal media, like we just noticed right now, actually acknowledging it. Those are very bad numbers for Joe Biden. With blacks, with African Americans, with independents. That's not how you win a general election.
No, it's not. And it's interesting because the Biden crowd has been cheering on a Trump nomination, I think, because they have wrongfully thought that they could make him an easier opponent in November. I think they're realizing now that that's just not the case. People are very much fed up with what they're seeing, and whether they like him personally or not, they know that Donald Trump's going to get the job done. And I think that they're, on the Democrat side, very fearful of Trump candidacy and a Trump nomination, which I'm very excited about.
I'm excited about it too. We saw him do it in 2016, quite frankly, in 2020, but I think this is going to be pretty much a game changer. But let's talk about this, because you made a lot of big national and international news recently when you endorsed President Trump. Tell us how that went down. You actually then went and met with Ron DeSantis before deciding.
Yes. So, there's a large segment of our party who has been against the idea of just sending Donald Trump back to the White House and just automatically getting on board because he was the last one there. And I understand that, and so I have met with, whether it's the well-heeled donor class or your run-of-the-mill voter, I have encountered all of them. They've all got there's a group of them that's been reluctant to get on board with Trump. And I told them, you know what? Rather than just jump on board, I'm going to vet the candidates. I will give everyone that's serious a chance, and then when I make my decision, you, the naysayer, the never-Trumper, whatever you may be, you'll respect my decision more, because I didn't just automatically do it. I actually talked with and vetted these candidates, and so I got a commitment from people in my district and across Texas that agreed with that strategy. And they said, okay, fine. If you decide that Trump is still the man after you've really done your homework, then I'll support you. And so I did that. And the last meeting I had was with Ron DeSantis. He was up in D.C. a couple weeks ago, met with him, and I realized in that meeting, now's not his time. I'm not critical of him. I don't agree with everything he's done, but he's been a decent governor, and I just don't think that now is his time. And so I made the decision after that meeting to endorse Donald Trump for president. I fulfilled my commitment to the Republicans in my district, even those who were a little skeptical. And I think now they're realizing that maybe I wasn't so crazy after all, because the American people are very much ready for a change. Republicans are lining up behind Donald Trump. The polling reflects that. The general election polling that we've just been talking about is reflective of a wave, I think, moving in our direction. And I think you're going to see more and more, not just members of Congress, but serious leaders, thought leaders, conservative leaders, get on board behind President Trump.
Yeah, and what were some of the considerations? Because I think you were, thoughtful and contemplative about this to make an informed choice. And I think it's important. You're elected to an office, but you do have to answer to your constituents and, be respectful and responsive to their concerns, to their needs. So you went ahead and did that, did your due diligence. What were some of the determining factors, whether they were political, ideologically based, et cetera, that you thought, well, this is who we need now for a commander-in-chief?
Yeah, I think it's more records-based. I know that Donald Trump has a record of securing the border. He has a record of deterring illegal immigration, and that's one of the big problems. Despite the fact that our borders are open, we wouldn't have this problem if there was not a sense south of the border that we are welcoming anyone and everyone across our southern borders, and that's the sense that Joe Biden has given. That was not something that people felt around the world when Donald Trump was president. They did not think that the borders of the United States of America were open, and that's the biggest issue, I believe, in my district and across the nation, no matter your party affiliation. And I believe that Donald Trump will secure the border. I believe that those who are coming across the border need to know they should not get comfortable, because Donald Trump is going to not only change the status quo, but I believe reverse some of the damage that we're seeing that's going to continue to get worse. So immigration was a big one for me, and someone who can go to Washington, knows where the bodies are buried, for lack of a better term, knows how to fight the Democrats, knows how to win, doesn't care what the other side says or does, knows how to not only deliver punches, but take punches. People are throwing punches at Donald Trump every day, multiple times a day, and he can take it. I just don't think now's the time to start with someone that does not have that experience in Washington. And this is a very key time in our nation's history. And I think what we do in the next 6 months, the candidate that we nominate will really determine the future generations of our nation. I think Donald Trump is, as I've said many times, the one to take us not back to the promised land, but to continue marching for many years after. I think he is the key to our success as a nation.
I really do, and I'm seeing some of the people that were somewhat skeptical before, had some concerns or reservations. We need someone fresh or new. How about we need the guy that has the proven track record to get back in there? We don't have time for training wheels and for introductory learning curve, that type of thing. But for me, as a mother, I really do actually worry about national security. I worry about our porous border. I worry about the child, the sex trafficking, the drugs and fentanyl pouring in, the gangs coming across the border. I worry about our adversaries coming in, the path of least resistance, where they're able to come in, whether it's Chinese nationals, Russians, etc., coming in through that border. The amount of people coming through, and all they're in a rush to do, the Biden administration, is process more people into this country, creating an undue economic, financial burden, a burden for the schools, for the hospitals, medical, all of the above, unaccompanied minors. This right now, every morning when I wake up, is the issue that actually causes me the gravest concern.
That's right.
It used to be a little bit more like edging out what it was the economy, which I'm obviously very concerned about, because we have someone in there that's not a businessman. He's been a paycheck collector, for 50 years. And he doesn't understand the value of a dollar, how to make a buck. And he's squandering so much money, foreign wars, all of the above. But people are paying attention to this, and people shouldn't think that women aren't paying attention to this. I mean, you talk to your constituents. What are some of the other concerns that you thought about and that they addressed to you?
The border is the biggest issue, because it's something that
Texas,
it can't be reversed very easily. Once we've let people in and they are all over the nation, it's hard to reverse that. If we lose all of our money because we've got a non-businessman in the White House, we can at least make that back.
Right.
A lot of the damage can be rolled back, but with open borders, the damage, I believe, is permanent. But this is serious on voters' minds. But as you said, the economy, I think it'll be huge. I don't know if we're heading into a recession. I don't wish for our nation to head in that direction. No. But it does seem that times are tough. Inflation continues to be high. We're going into the summer months. Americans wish they were taking vacations like they did when Donald Trump was president. And our lives are different. And it's not a good thing for Joe Biden.
No, and it's tangible. People can feel it. They can feel it in their, their wallet, their paycheck, their savings. They're concerned. The level of anxiety is definitely heightened, but not without good reason.
Right. Quite
frankly, I always knew that it was going to be pretty bad. I said to myself, "My goodness, this guy," because I know what he's, I would not even say incapable of doing, and what he, created in this country was a total disaster in 2 short years.
Right.
Did we even really think it was going to be, this bad? Just lack of any kind of manufacturing or infrastructure here, like the economy, national security, what's been going on with foreign countries. Our adversaries have been emboldened. Russia, Putin's on the march, essentially, and all of the wasteful spending, in Ukraine, but we're not in a financial position to do so. at the expense of our own military and national security.
Yeah, Joe Biden campaigned when he ran his video. He said, "We want to finish what we started." I'm scared to death for him to finish what he started. I want him to stop what he started. And so I just think we're in this period of not just uncertainty, but really disastrous planning and execution on their part. The American people are not happy. This is not Barack Obama running for a second term where we could reluctantly roll our eyes and say, yeah, you made good on those promises. Joe Biden's accomplished nothing and actually reversed so much of the progress that the Trump administration and President Trump.
That was good for the country.
Yeah, it was.
Like, that's the problem. This wasn't just like partisan politics. The Republicans put stuff in that they wanted Trump put in. He actually tried to go in there. That's why I think the deep state, whether it's, the establishment, whether it's Republicans or independents or libertarians or Democrats, don't want Trump because he'll actually go in, evaluate it.
Right.
Not afraid to change his mind, by the way, by listening and researching, going over everything. And then he'll make a decision. He'll call the shots.
Right. They may even agree with him half the time.
Right.
Yeah.
But they don't like that they can't control him,
Right.
which is a huge problem. And I want to get your reaction to a recent attack by former DHS official and DeSantis PAC founder Ken Cuccinelli. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I
Against
do.
Governor Abbott, okay? Claiming that he's not doing enough. Let me get my earpiece in here. On the border. What is your reaction to that?
I don't know what Ken Cuccinelli accomplished when he was in office, but for them to be attacking the Texas governor, I think is just another example of how unorganized the DeSantis campaign is right now.
What do you think is behind that, though? Because it seems like such a bad idea.
Yeah, there's been some strange competition between the two of them, it seems, between Abbott and DeSantis, and I'm not really sure I understand that, but DeSantis I think he wants to be the king of all innovation on the conservative side. And people see through that. I mean, he did not actually keep Florida open through all the months of COVID. I remember coming here, my wife and I went by some outdoor market just yesterday, and she said, I remember when I was here during COVID, they made me wear a mask outside, and I thought it was crazy. And I'm thinking, well, Ron DeSantis would deny that you ever had to wear a mask.
Right.
And so we're seeing these little fights. I think they're insider fights. The average American is not paying attention to what the DeSantis campaign says about the Texas governor. But I also think they're just really looking for victories. They've had such bad weeks.
It's been abysmal.
It's been terrible. And so I think they're really looking for a victory anywhere.
Well, you look like a genius, by the way.
Oh, well,
right?
I don't know about
you went out there in front, you did your work, you investigated, you asked the questions, you met with them, you were fair and honest. It wasn't just, okay, I'm just going to check the Trump box. You did it after careful thought and deliberation.
I did.
And then now you're able to follow it up with these text messages with polls and the results and what's going on in this very positive, trend. And DeSantis has been given his shot.
That's right.
To be able to get out there, but it seems like one misstep after the next. These are not good decisions. I mean, if I was best friends with him, I would say, hey, listen, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You should be sitting there not tearing down Republican governors like Abbott or trying to go after President Trump. You should be trying to put a foothold in there, be the one identifying and embodying the America First movement so you could be like a front runner, the chosen one in 2028.
Sure.
It makes no sense to me to try to pick this fight.
Right.
Because when people pick a fight with President Trump, they get badly injured.
Yeah, and it's not like he left office with the conservative base upset with him. We were very disappointed to see him leave the White House, and he has not lost support. He has supporters that will only vote for him. And I think that this idea that everyone should just lay down and let Ron DeSantis be the nominee is just crazy. And
yeah,
I think it's unfortunate for some of my colleagues in Congress that they weren't a little earlier to the game, but I still want them to get on board. But,
exactly.
But I do.
We got a Big Ten.
We do, but I do think, especially with these poll numbers, you're going to see so many more members lining up behind President Trump. The fact that almost the entire Florida congressional delegation is behind Donald Trump when their own governor is a potential candidate for president.
That's a big deal.
That's a big statement.
And that was a huge blow. And I remember, he had the dinner and everything in Mar-a-Lago, and everyone showed up from the Florida, delegation that has endorsed. That's your home turf. You're supposed to have like home field advantage.
Yeah, you're supposed to have that locked down.
Locked down.
Yeah.
Locked down. And instead you're like, who? Anyone? Bueller? Who's here for me?
Right.
DeSantis, like, can someone choose me? I don't know. It's just not good. But listen, I live in Florida, okay? And, all of our children go to school here. We love Florida. We're happy to call this our home. We were happy with, Ron DeSantis as governor. But, deciding who you want to be president of the United States when the circumstances are so dire is a completely other ball game.
That's right.
So it's natural to want the person that has the proven track record and the best results. I'm gonna real quick thing I want to talk about on the absence, like Dareth, of like leadership and the Democrat Party. So if Biden is able to by some stretch of the imagination, crawl across the finish line to actually be the nominee, which I'm still skeptical about. Despite some of the recent efforts and machinations on their part to try to say that he's ready to run. Then there's a bench that includes people like Kamala Harris, which is, I think, like her approval rating, I think, is lower than Biden's.
Sure.
Total disaster. She was the czar or the czarina of the border. Failure. Not a good record
Total
there.
failure.
And then now she's going to be the czar of artificial intelligence. What could be more scary? Kamala controlling the robot.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah.
What?
I mean, there's already questions I get all the time back home is who's controlling Joe Biden? And I don't really have a great answer. But,
It's the Obama people.
I
Like
think
Susan Rice and Valerie Jarrett.
I would admit that there's at least one or two people with a brain in that operation that knows polling results and that they can't be feeling good about this. So if they get down to a certain point and Kamala is holding them back or the only thing standing in the way from him at least being in a better place, I wouldn't be surprised if they made some changes.
And then we'll see, because so we have that disaster, right, of Kamala, Biden, okay, awful. And then we've got Newsom in California, and that's really going well in California. I mean, nobody wants that.
No.
That's like New York. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? We might as well have like Alvin Bragg decide to run for.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a total mess. But I want to talk about your great tweet. You had a great tweet recently. The Biden team lied about illegal immigration being down, about inflation being transitory, about gas prices being over $5 when Biden took office. So what will they try to lie about next?
Well, I'll answer my own tweet's question.
Oh, this is so, I love when I say tweet and then you answer it back. This is a fun game.
You're the first person that's asked. I believe that they will next lie about how they are helping to solve all of these problems. They sent 1,500, I believe, troops down to the border. I believe they're going to lie about wanting to do something. They've already had to backtrack and admit that there's actually a problem at the border. Remember, it was the longest time before they'd even say we had an issue. Now they realize we've got an issue. They even say they have an issue. I think now they're going to say they're doing something about it. I was criticized last week by the Biden White House for voting for across-the-board cuts for this debt limit deal that we're hoping to get with the White House. We have talks tomorrow between the Speaker and President Biden. And they were so hung up on cuts to border security. For 2,000, I believe, employees was the number. The issue is not the number of Border Patrol agents at the border. The issue is a lack of enforcement of laws. The issue is the abuse of the asylum system and the sense that the borders are open because they are. Not because we don't have security at the border, but because when they come to our border, we just let them in.
Right.
We don't need to hire more people to let more people in.
And we don't know who's really coming through.
Right.
We don't really know. We're not able to effectively ascertain the true identity of the individuals coming in and what kind of criminal record they may have, et cetera. They have 10 different names. I know as a prosecutor, they would come in to my courtroom and it was like a sin for a prosecutor to ask them, well, what is your true and real name? And I would ask to have them printed so that we could determine their identity so I can know exactly what they've done and, how much bail should be held for or whatever. If somebody has like a history of child abuse or sexual assault or drug trafficking, like you need to know that.
Sure. So they'll lie about doing something about the border. They'll also lie about the economy. If it happens to break their way, they'll lie and take credit. I also believe they're going to lie about the energy situation. They're going to say we're doing something. But I don't think the American people have forgotten about the Keystone Pipeline. The American people have not forgotten how much they've burnt on fuel that we are importing from the Middle East. And I believe Venezuela is on the list of our next savior. I don't understand why this administration is so anti-United States energy, but they're okay with funding places like Russia. They claim to be against Russia in this Ukraine war, except they're funding the Russian war against Ukraine by keeping gas prices high and sending all of our money to places like Russia and Saudi Arabia. It's crazy to me.
It's crazy to me, and it is. It's very anti-American. It must be very troubling to you with a state that is so robust and focused on American energy independence. And, we've got the ability and the power here, but nevertheless, we're actually helping, we're playing for the other team. That's what they're doing.
It's crazy.
I don't know. It makes no sense to me. How can anybody vote for something like that? Like, what is the overall ideology and agenda and platform? Is it, it is. It's like America last versus America first. helping our enemies, funding them at our own, expense. Anyway, it makes me
according
crazy.
to the polls just this week, they're not going to vote for it again. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
I want to talk to you real quickly, too, about the House Judiciary Committee. Can you update us on the work that you're doing there, and what can we kind of expect coming up? Because I think it's a very important committee, by the way.
This week, the biggest issue that you'll see coming out of the House Judiciary Committee is this week on the House floor, we are taking up the border security bill. That's on Thursday of this week. That bill came through House Judiciary, then it went through the Homeland bill. We had some issues on our Republican side with the asylum features of the bill. The big issue here, though, is border security. We're not talking about immigration, we're talking about border security. Those are two separate issues. Democrats want comprehensive immigration reform, and that's great, but we got to secure the border first before we start talking about immigration reform. And so this week, you'll see that. In the coming months, you'll see the head of the FBI come before our committee.
That's going to be a big deal.
It will be big. We have depositions later this week with an official from the New York District Attorney's Office. We've won some key victories with the courts. New York sued and said that they shouldn't have to come before our committee, and the courts didn't agree. And so, we learned when Nancy Pelosi was in charge that you have a lot of leeway when you're in the majority. And so we're exercising that leeway and using this majority, I believe, to the advantage of the American people and to truth and to what we all suspect is the case, but we're going to find out and get some answers.
That's fantastic. I feel like we have such really strong fighters like yourself in Congress right now, making a tremendous difference. This is the best I've seen in probably 20 years in terms of the follow through, in terms of the committees, in terms of the people placed on those committees that are intelligent and really love this country. You have a beautiful wife, great kids. Very nice to meet them. And, I'm sure this is a big thing. It's a passion project for you. You want to fight for this country, for your family and for other families.
And, Jim Jordan's chair of Judiciary, he's wonderful. And we are very much united. Even when we disagree, the factions, they say factions, I say just different groups of folks, but we all pretty much get along at the end of the day. And you see that by the way we are able to constantly outperform what the media and what Democrats and what Joe Biden say. They said we wouldn't pass that debt limit limit bill with the cuts. We did. We lost 4 votes and we couldn't afford to lose any more, but we passed it.
But you passed it.
Kevin McCarthy said he would get there, and people said he couldn't make it, and he made it. It took him 15 votes, but we got there. And sometimes it's a struggle, but I think having those struggles internally and working through the various groups helps us to get a good bill to the floor, and we get the votes, and the American people are better off. And I think even if things that we pass don't become law, we are making a case for the voters next year that Republicans perform, we execute on our promises, and if you really want to see some action, then give us the White House and give us the Senate.
Oh my God. See, if this is a MAGA Republican, I want more of this, okay? I think it's pretty good. Joe Biden tries to scare us, but we're scared in excitement and love it. All right, Congressman, thank you so much. Lance Gunn from the great state of Texas, and we'll have you come back so we can get some updates about what's going on with the FBI case and the New York case as well. All right, thank you. And we have much more to come, including an exclusive interview with the great Victor Davis Hanson on how big blue states fell so far, so fast. And don't forget to like and subscribe down below so you never miss an episode of the show. But first, I want to introduce you to a wonderful brand new sponsor called Genucel Skincare. With Genucel Skincare, you'll find yourself looking refreshed, rejuvenated, and years younger. How's it look so far? Right before your eyes and just in time for Mother's Day. It's safe, cruelty-free, and all natural because the Genucel philosophy towards natural skincare is simple. Cultivating the science of beautiful skin and bringing out the best in you. Sounds good, right? And it's evidence-based with actual results from real customers with real reviews. For example, Claire writes, I absolutely love Genucel. My skin feels so good. It's tighter, it's younger with a more even tone, and I only used it for a week. My advice for everyone, take a before picture. Sounds like a good idea. So with Genucel, there is a whole host of incredible products to make sure your skin looks as radiant as ever, like the Deep Sea Cleanser, the Correcting Serum, anti-wrinkle treatments, and much more. I don't know. I have it. I am a customer and a user of Genucel products, and they are absolutely fantastic. So you give it a try, and I've got my girlfriends, older and younger, that are using it too, and we all really love it. So try it out. Stay healthy and be at your best with Genucel. So you can go to genucel.com/Kimberly and get over 70% off Genucel's most popular package during their Mother's Day sale. What do you got to lose? Try it out. That's a big discount, a huge saving. And this most popular package features the Ultra Retinol and Dark Spot Corrector. So if you're in the sun at all or even casually, this is a friend to all of us, all right? We don't want those dark spots. That will have your skin looking so much better than ever. And that's not all. You will also get a complimentary Spa Essentials box with every package that you order. So discover the Genucel difference and visit genucel.com/Kimberly today. And I also want to bring you a special message from Patriot Lifestyle, where you can save more and spend less on a whole host of different benefits, from non-insurance healthcare benefits to savings on travel, identity theft, legal services, and even pet care. Take a look. Kimberly Guilfoyle. We've commissioned a lifestyle benefit program for our America First Patriots, Patriot Lifestyle. This program includes identity theft protection. And as a former prosecutor, I know that identity theft is the fastest growing crime in America. You also have free and discounted legal services, roadside assistance, travel discounts, cashback rewards while shopping on the internet, and our newest service, Pet Assure. Right, Mario and Luigi? Where you receive discounts at veterinarians across the country and pet supply stores. Patriot Lifestyle covers you, your family, and your furry friends for less than $1 a day. Follow the link and please sign up to get your Patriot Lifestyle started. And we're going to continue to update you on all the Patriot Lifestyle programs designed to bring you the best savings and top quality benefits. And now we turn to our next story, spotlighting the continued disasters in big blue states from coast to coast. For example, in the city of San Francisco, we're seeing a major retail exodus from downtown. Nordstrom, Saks Fifth Avenue, and Anthropologie are all shutting down stores, citing concerns over safety, crime, and an empty city center. It is all the natural consequence of left-wing policies that coddle criminals, stifle businesses, and push out middle-class families. But it's not just San Francisco. In New York City, we're seeing more lawlessness on display as far-left agitators actually blocked off subway tracks last week to protest the death of Jordan Neely, a career criminal who died after being restrained on the subway after making violent threats to passengers. Take a look at this chaos at the Lexington Avenue station. Of course, this is just a small sample of the lawlessness that we see plaguing big Democrat-run cities day after day. And it's the failing far left agenda that Joe Biden and the Democrats want to bring to your front door and across this entire country. Here for reaction to all of this, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, author of The Dying Citizen, one of the greatest minds in politics today, Victor Davis Hanson joins us. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You know, when I look at that, I say to myself, were these people not raised right? Who thinks it's a good idea to jump on the subway tracks and the rails and go crazy so they can get 3 minutes on camera? I mean, what is happening in this country? When you see the decay in cities like San Francisco, you see it in New York and in other blue states, how do you explain to someone what happened and how this happened so fast?
Well, I think to quote Hemingway, it was gradually and then it was suddenly. And we have seen over the last 4 or 5 years with critical legal theory, critical race theory, critical penal theory, an idea that started in the universities and it swept through the media and the politicians and the administrative state that laws are relative. They don't reflect morality. In other words, if you go in and take a candy bar, you shouldn't be punished because wealthy white men made that law because they don't eat candy bars. So they just created a whole set of oppressive laws. And then we got, I think, under the radar. Nobody really understood what these Soros district attorneys were doing. Nobody paid any attention. And they were obscure races. And we woke up one morning and we had people that were actually implementing these theories in practice by not prosecuting people, not arresting them. And if they arrest them, they didn't indict them all the time. If they indict them, they didn't convict them. If they convict them, they didn't incarcerate them. And that created a message. So those kids that you had on the subway, the message they got was there was no consequences to breaking the law because the law is ideological now. It depends on whether you're a victim or a victimizer. If you're a perceived victim, then you get exempt. And that was gradual, but suddenly I think the George Floyd riots of the 120 days of 2020, the COVID lockdowns, the paranoia about the disease, and then that whole contentious Biden, the 2020, that whole contentious political back and forth. And I think that was the spark that let off the fumes and it blew up. And now we've got large swaths of the country where there's no law to speak. It's kind of like 1870 in California. I just was back from San Francisco. You know, I can imagine, I think it was safer in 1870 probably, because if you did what you're doing, you watch people defecate, urinate, fornicate, and inject right on the street. And I don't think you could do that in the 19th century. And they do it on the presupposition that they're victims or that people think they're victims and there will be no consequences to their actions.
Yeah, it's two different, paths in the justice system of about what's applicable depending on how you categorize yourself as a victim.
It is, and people, they do, and people make that a necessary adjustment. So if you've got a guy on January 6th that the head of the Proud Boys, I don't condone what he did, but if he pushed a policeman, he's looking at 10 years. If you're in New York and you're a law student and you're left wing and you throw a firebomb into an NYPD car, you may get 1 year. And that message goes out to everybody, and they're thinking, well, which side do I want to be on? Do I want to be sort of a progressive because there's certain advantages of being progressive? Whether it's the IRS or the DOJ, or if I'm going to go protest at a pro-life clinic, I'm in trouble. If I go, at a pro-choice, but if I do it at a pro-life, I'm not. And everybody knows that, so they act accordingly.
Yeah, it's really true. It's a reward and incentive built into that, that thought process and to the decision making. Well, if I go and identify this way, then I'm not going to be held accountable to the same rules and laws and norms of the rest of society. It's like you get a selective path. Absolutely. So it really encourages. It's not operating at any kind of deterrent because people say, why do I want to be held accountable? Family. Yeah, exactly. Talk to me about that. That's a very big example.
The Biden family, I mean, we had a laptop that I think was one of the most self-incriminatory pieces of evidence you can imagine, where one of the participants testified or said in public discourse that those emails were accurate. And we had Hunter basically talking about his father as a recipient of a 10% cut, Mr. Big Guy. And then we had the receipt of the repairman that showed that it was authentic. And yet we had the FBI paying Twitter $3 million a year to suppress things like that. They suppressed it. And I think everybody's wondering how the Biden family had a lifestyle that B, wasn't commensurate with the types of incomes they were reporting or could report. It just didn't make sense how Joe Biden spent a lifetime in politics. He only had 4 years as a private citizen in his entire 40-year career. How could a person accumulate that amount of homes and lifestyle? Or Hunter had no skills to speak of. So everybody understands that they're given a pass, and they will not be given a pass when they're deemed no longer politically useful. So if these polls continue to go down, or if Joe Biden continues to fade at a geometric rate rather than just arithmetically, I think people will make the the conclusion that he's no longer useful as a veneer to this hard left agenda that he was supposed to cover up or moderate good old Joe from Scranton, and he'll be expendable. And that's how the left operates. And I already start to see a little bit of it now, where you're getting people actually talking about an indictment of Hunter. That wouldn't have happened 2 years ago. But
No.
it's not based on the law. It's based on the perception of what's useful.
And then probably, like they say, the plan that he has in place, maybe to wrap this up so that he can then, while he's still president, pardon his son.
Yeah, or whatever. And the same thing with Donald Trump. You can see what's going on. They have lined up Prosecutor Bragg, Prosecutor Letitia James, Willis in Georgia, Smith is a special, and and then the woman who's suing him, they're almost calibrating those in iteration so that from now until the next 18 months, they're going to have performance art writs, performance art gag orders, performance art appearances, with the idea they're going to hemorrhage the nominee for president. And they're going to use lawfare, especially if they find out the polls, as they seem to be recently, are not favorable to Biden. That's the only recourse they have, is to turn to lawfare. And I think they're going to try to do that for the next 18 months.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And all of this, I think, just from a more global perspective, it seems to tie in this larger effort by Democrats to deny merit, deny accountability as well, in favor of victimhood. I mean, I think this is part of their political philosophy and their roadmap, path to success, to getting these votes, to getting the people to sign on. And you recently actually tweeted about how Biden's new housing plan would actually punish home buyers with good credit scores. I mean, it's applicable throughout his policies, and it's driving his policies like this.
Here in California, PG&E, the power company, is going to assess people a surcharge on their power bill that has nothing to do with their metered use, but their income level. And I guess it's this radical equality of result that they feel that they want to make everybody equal in the back end. And to do that, they need a lot of government power, A, and B, the architects, have to be excused from the consequences of their own ideology, because they never have to, they don't worry about mortgages. They don't worry about the price of gas. They don't worry about being beat up in the subway. They don't take the subway. So they look at the American people as sort of lab rats that they can experiment with these hardcore neo-socialist ideas on the premise that, well, if they go wrong, or the border's a mess, I don't live down there near the border, or I'm not going to see anybody who's an illegal alien, or smash and grab or carjacking is not going to affect me. And I think it's kind of almost a psychological mechanism where very wealthy, elite left-wing people on the two coasts feel so bad about their privilege, but they feel so adamant they don't want to give it up, that in the abstract, they feel guilty. So they implement all these programs that destroy other people, but they feel good about themselves because in theory they're egalitarian. But they don't care about people at all.
Yeah, and
I think that's a Republican problem. I think has been that they never make that argument that the left is amoral and mean and vicious and selfish and destroy poor and middle class people. We've talked too much about capital gains tax or all of these things, but we really got to hold the left accountable for the damage they do to people that can't protect themselves in the middle class, because they despise the middle class. They really do.
They do. They want the middle class to drop down to, the lower socioeconomic class and make them dependent on government. That is the whole, I think, point and purpose.
Yeah.
And, from a larger perspective, like when you look at the New York City, for example, the subway protests, there seems to be really, honestly, this progressive culture of lies to ignore key facts to a story in order to fuel hate and division, to put gasoline on it. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the things they're trying to do is to in the Needley example, to demonize what a person, the Good Samaritan who tried to intervene to protect people, that they want to punish him so that no one else ever tries that again. Because if anybody else tried that again, they create a deterrent in the subway, where everybody who wanted to go and shout and threaten people would be very terrified that there might be somebody who'd stand up and stop them. So they've anybody who objects to their prevailing ideology, they want to put down and destroy. And so they're going to use this. And I didn't, it's so bizarre because here you have somebody, he may have overacted, he may have not, we don't know, but everybody was terrified. He stood up, he subdued the person, and suddenly the person, we learn, has 42 prior arrests, 3 assault convictions, and he's a noble victim. And it was we don't I just saw today, to give one last example, that we still don't know the Nashville shooter's manifesto details. Nobody will tell us because we're afraid that it shows that there's a transgendered movement that supports violence, and they don't want that to get out. But at the same time, the shooter in Texas, the Hispanic fellow that killed, I looked up today, and already they're jumping to conclusions and saying that he was a white supremacist and was acting out to further the cause of white supremacy. He had no manifesto. So when we have a manifesto, they won't release the true feelings, but when you don't, they will impugn that a Mexican person of Mexican ancestry is actually a white supremacist. Sort of like the New York Times saying that, George Zimmerman was a white Hispanic. Mm-hmm. They manipulate language to get the narrative straight, even when the facts are not so easily manipulated.
Yeah, they have no honesty and no integrity in it. It's nothing but like semantic gymnastics, and they will repeat and shapeshift one lie after the next in order to suit the narrative that they have decided to drive, forward. And we see it, like you said, not only just applicable in just, in blue states, but just in the rhetoric, the ideology, the platform of the Biden administration, of the liberal Democrats, of trying to cover up for, potential trans violence, not sharing the manifesto. I mean, it really has gotten pretty extensive, the lengths to which they will go to be able to protect the narrative, that they want. And instead of seeing some of these warning signs across, the country and what's been going on, it seems like Biden and the Democrats want to bring like these failures that are just really, tangible in blue states, and they want to bring it to the rest of the country, despite the destruction and the mayhem and the violence and the discord that it's creating. How do conservatives stop that?
Yeah. Well, I think they don't have any margin of error because we have developments that have happened the last 50 years where, in the state of California, 1/3 of all the people on public assistance are in California, and half of all the homeless people are in California. And you've got sort of institutionalized constituencies now that, to correct it, if somebody was brave enough to say, we're not going to allow people to live on the street, we're going to try to find a humane way, but we're going to have to use some type of coercion to make people live in a cubicle or a tent city away from the damage they're doing to themselves. I don't think they would take a special type of politician that had to be completely at the local, regional, state, and national level. We have some, but the problem that Republican parties had the last 20 years is they would rather lose nobly than win ugly, to be frank. In other words, to do what would be necessary to take on the media. The other thing is, the left doesn't have a popular support on any of these issues that we've talked about, the border, crime, energy. Nobody is really transgendered ideas. They poll less than 50%, but when you look at the K through 12 academia, the corporate boardroom, professional sports, Hollywood, Silicon Valley, print media, traditional media, network news, they control all of those institutions. So they can take a message and amplify it and resonate it so loudly and so steadily that we sort of doubt ourselves. We say, wow, maybe I just looked at my Google search and all the searches show that they're persecuting this poor transgendered shooter in Nashville. Or, wow, I just saw it on MSNBC, or I just looked at the New York Times, or I watched TV in a Hollywood, and my kid came home from school and lectured me about it. that's pretty powerful. And we let them take control of all of these institutions. And now we're just learning this. So when we fight back, like with the Bud commercial, that we're kind of surprised how much power we have as a majority in the country if we really put our mind to it. If we were to, but we always say we don't want to emulate their tactics. I got a job, I go to church, I got a community, my family. That's not my concern to be hyper political, 360 degrees or 24/7. That's what the left does. But the left assumes that we're always going to be that way, and so they get away with things that we have to stop.
It sounds like we have to be hyper political in a sense in order to get things done and, change the course. So, you're in California. I was born in San Francisco. I lived in, Los Angeles, worked as a prosecutor at both of those offices. It used to be a very nice place to live. It's hard for me. I was First Lady of San Francisco when, I was part of keeping law and order there in the DA's office. And it's sad. I mean, it just seems almost unrecoverable or, irreparable damage has been done. What do you think the solution is? Do you think California can be saved? Because they're trying to export California, essentially, the mess that's there to the rest of the country.
Well, to answer that, we have to ask where we got into this situation. I think one of them was about 10 million people, we think, have left the last 15 years, 500,000 in the last 18 months. And these were the old Reagan, Dick Mason, Pete Wilson voter. And they went to tax, Nevada, Tennessee, Florida, Texas. We know that. Then we had $9 trillion of market capitalization between San Francisco. And it used to be the center, as you remember, was LA.
Yes.
That was the LA Times, that was conservative. The Bay Area was liberal. But now the Bay Area culture's got all the money. And they have enormous amounts of money. So in every California race, the Republican is outspent 5-1. And then we had illegal immigration, and we did not assimilate or integrate our people coming here illegally. We got rid of a lot of propositions that would have stopped that. And so what's the answer now is the only thing that I can see is going to change, because people are leaving rather than fighting, is we have about almost 50% of people who identify as Mexican American or Latino. And they are, for the first time in my life, the second and third generation is starting to say, I don't like people coming into my church and yelling. I don't like a guy hitting me on the streets of San Francisco when I have a small cart selling stuff. So a lot of the liberal policies they supported in exchange for, leniency on the border or federal entitlements, they are now starting to be middle class, and they find them as middle class people oppressive and targeted at them, whether it's gasoline prices or electricity prices or rents and all of this hyper regulation. And they're not happy with it. I don't think they're unhappy enough yet to in a majority, but I think about 35 or 40% of the Hispanic vote in California, which is kind of the largest majority, is now lost to the Democrats. And that's going to have to be increased. Yeah, it's got to be increased. And otherwise, the only other bright news is there's a number of people, as you know, across the political spectrum in and out of California, Bill Maher and Elon Musk, Barry Weiss, Richard Dreyfuss the other day. These are left-wing people that feel that they're kind of like Dr. Frankenstein, and they created the monster, and the monster came up and devoured them. And they thought, wow, we supported all this stuff, and now they're canceling me, or they hate me, Elon Musk, or they're going after my new Twitter, or they're denying me a chance to get a role in Hollywood because I'm a white male, or Bill Maher's audience is attacking. So I think this is not a Democratic Party. This is a hard left revolution. Oh. And I think it's getting harder left, and it's starting to scare the people who helped create it, kind of like the French Revolution, the Jacobins. They're looking at these people and they say, oh my God, I do not want my daughter to come home at 12 and tell me she's transitioning without any evidence of that, just because a teacher told her. Or, oh my God, I have a pickup, I want to drive it. I don't want to give it up in California in 10 years. And kind of like that attitude that it is starting to affect people. And before, it did not affect them as much. But as the whole society starts to unwind, there's a lot of middle class people that aren't that wealthy, and they're thinking, I don't have the resources to escape what I created. It's starting to hit me. I got to take the subway once in a while, or I, my son got hit by a hit and run driver and they didn't do anything, or, this is unsustainable, or my daughter's in the U.S. military and she says it's woke more than the university. So they're starting to see what has happened. And I think they feel that if they don't join independents and conservatives, they're going to lose the country. I think this is much more serious than the 60s revolution, much more, even though the 60s was so far was more violent. You can see we're going to get, if this continues, it's going to destroy a lot of universities. It's completely, and it's going to destroy a lot of institutions. And I think it's already destroyed the police, and it's getting close to destroying the military. And so,
and very
as
quickly,
we saw in Afghanistan.
And with that disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan, and our military preparedness is not what it used to be, or the weaponry, etc. And we've been favoring, Ukraine and, exporting things out of this country at our own personal national security expense. But I want to talk to you about your book, which is fantastic. It's called The Dying Citizen, and it seems as relevant as ever, especially during these perilous times. Talk about the themes of the book and what people can learn from it and where they can get it.
Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon. That's the easiest place to get it. And I was just trying to explain that if you look at a citizen, there used to be a middle-class, viable, autonomous person that could make a living, and he was free from government. He wasn't a peasant. Peasant is dependent on wealthy people or government. And yet, when you look at sort of some of the statistics, and they're very disturbing, and people are getting married not at 23, but at 31. They're having their first child at 33 to 34. They're buying their home at 40. So we have a prolonged adolescence of dependency. And you can really see the left talking about the life of Julia, their pajama boy commercials, where they encourage that. So that's one part. And then we used to have an idea of a citizen, but 50 million people in the United States are residents right now. And they feel they were born in another country and they're living here either illegally or legally, but they blurred the distinction between what a citizen can do to what a resident. And there's only about 3 things left that a citizen can do that a resident can't. One of them so far is to vote, but that's being undermined. Here in California, illegal aliens can vote in school board elections. And the second is they could hold office. I think that's eroding. And the third was they can come in and out of their country as they please. But it's really harder for a citizen with a passport. If you come in, say, from Mexico City and you fly into LAX, you have to have a passport. If you just walk across the border, apparently you don't. So that was a big worry as well. And then we have these institutions that the administrative state is 2 million people. And so the amount of government is no longer the individual, but it's more judge, jury, and executioner, administrative, legislative, and judicial. So if here out on this farm where I am, if it rains and there's a puddle there, a big puddle, some bureaucrat from the EPA of California can determine that's an inland waterway. But I don't have the resources to fight that. It's not a legislative decision. He just decided that. And if you talk to people that regulate, they'll say, go ahead and sue us.
Right.
We don't care. They have enormous resources, but as you know, the citizen has none. The other thing is we have these evolutionaries that want to change the system now because it didn't satisfy their immediate agenda. So we want to pack the cord. We want to get rid of the Electoral College. We want to let in Puerto Rico. We want to let it make Washington, D.C. a state to get more senators. We want to get rid of the filibuster. We've kind of legalized the idea that you can go to a Supreme Court justice's home and scream and yell at him in the window so he affects his decision. So there's also this effort to change the system. The left is trying to change how we vote, how we process government, about our judicial system. And then finally, we have our elite believe they're citizens of the world. I mean, they feel that the people on the East Coast feel like they're part of the EU, and the people on the West Coast feel, I guess, they have closer, they like what China or Japan or South Korea is, but they feel that international statutes, such as the International Criminal Court, should adjudicate whether an officer can order an artillery strike, or the Paris Climate Accord should tell us whether we could have diesel fuel sold in cars in California. So there's an effort to outsource autonomy in the United States to unelected transcontinental people from, the Davos people. And so
Right.
all of those conspire to
Global
make the
elites.
citizen less powerful. And they're less powerful, and they're depressed, and they act in two ways. They either get angry and they vote against it, but so many just say, you know what, I'm dropping out. So I don't watch they'll say to me when I talk to them, I don't watch the Oscars. I haven't seen the Emmys in years. I don't know what the Tonys are. I don't care about the Pulitzer Prize. I don't read the New York Times. I haven't watched an NBA playoff
Right.
game in 20 years. That's how they react. But they haven't been galvanized because they feel powerless to go out and really organize and vote, because they feel that you can, with Zoom or all of the entertainment, you can kind of cocoon or go into a monastery of the mind.
Right.
Just say to yourself, this country's had it, I've had it with this country, and I don't want to participate in the major institutions. I don't go to a Hollywood movie. I don't watch network TV. I don't watch network news. I've had it. And that's kind of dangerous in a way,
It is.
because we're getting when you add a geographical force multiplier of red, blue, it's kind of like 1860, where political differences were magnified by geography. Mason-Dixon South,
Yeah.
Mason-Dixon North. And you're starting to see that again. Rural America and Southern America and some of the Western states are very different cultures in the bicoastal, almost like two different countries. And they're
Yes.
getting more so as people
Like the
migrate.
DMZ in North Korea and South Korea. It's getting a little crazy.
It
I'm
is.
serious.
Yeah.
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 I don't know.
No, it is. I'm worried.
I'm worried too, but I think people need
Yeah.
to inform themselves. I think your book, like I said, is fantastic. The Dying Citizen, you can get it on Amazon. I think truly you're one of the most important intellectual, political, and historical figures out there. So as much time as you can spend listening to Victor Davis Hanson and reading his book, it is time well spent. I want to thank you, my friend, for coming on the program, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
All right, be well.
Thank you.
And we have even more to come on the program. But first, I want to thank another one of our brave sponsors, Goldco. Look at everything we've talked about today. It shows you the importance of being prepared and diversifying your portfolio with gold and silver. Gold and silver can protect your retirement savings from inflation and dollar devaluation. We see all the economic warning signs, and I want you to be ready. I'm ready. With Goldco, you can roll over your 401k or IRA into precious metals and safeguard your savings tax and penalty free. From precious metals, IRAs to direct purchases of gold and silver, Goldco has helped thousands of Americans diversify and protect their retirement savings. So go to kimsmetals.com to learn more. That's kimsmetals.com. And in closing tonight, what we are seeing from Biden and the far left Democrats is an agenda centered around destruction, higher costs, higher crime, and lower quality of life. And while Biden and his family peddle influence overseas while undermining America's sovereignty right here at home. And now, more than ever, we can see it for what it is, the politics of personal gain combined with the extremism of progressive politics. Our own border isn't secure, but the swamp will ship off billions to protect another country's boundaries. Our cities aren't safe, but somehow you're called privileged for being concerned about it. And our own economy is on the decline, while Biden pretends wages are growing. Don't ever deny what you and your family are experiencing every day. Don't ever give in to the nonstop gaslighting from the far left radicals in power. But don't ever give up hope on a more prosperous future. Restoring prosperity is only one election cycle away. And the America First agenda has the plan to ensure that middle-class families come first. that safety is a prime concern, and that American greatness is reestablished. And of course, we are right here on Rumble to cover it all, where we reject the false narrative and always seek the truth. So be sure to like and subscribe to my channel at Kimberly Guilfoyle and Donald Trump Jr. on his. Turn on notifications, download the Rumble app, hit the like button for our episodes, and tell all your friends and family so they know exactly where to find us and get the truth. And be sure to follow us across all of our platforms, Twitter, Truth Social, Facebook, and Instagram, Kimberly Guilfoyle and Donald Trump Jr. And don't miss Don Jr.'s hit show tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern with the great John Solomon. You do not want to miss it. 6 p.m. Eastern, live right here. And in the meantime, hop on over to Locals for a moment at kimberly.locals.com for a live Q&A. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Be well.